Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining this webinar about social enterprise accelerators with tips on how to find the best one for your organization and how to make your application stand out. My name is Mark Horshevsky. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MovingWorlds.org, joined by a really wonderful group of panelists now joining from not quite every continent, but we got about half of them covered. So really excited to jump into the content here and share the information, and most importantly, give you all the opportunity to ask some questions. We've been really excited by the turnout and the interest in the topic at hand, and looking forward to sharing the thoughts from some of our different speakers. So quick bit of Zoom housekeeping for those of you that are new to this Zoom tool. You should all have access to your own Zoom toolbar. It's either a black bar with white icons or a white bar with black icons. And in there, the most important tools that you'll see is a chat feature. So you can always send us a specific question if you have one. But there's also a Q&A feature. And that in particular is a great widget that you can send across any question, and you can see us queue that up in order to ask questions. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask at any time. At the end of every speaker, we will do a quick bit of Q&A, and then at the very end, we'll do a longer question and answer session with all our panelists. So we're going to go through some introductions, a very short one about MovingWorlds, and then we'll jump into our other speakers. We'll then specifically turn the microphone over to Brent, who's from the Entrepreneurship Database program, to give an all-up view of the social enterprise accelerator industry. And then you'll actually get to hear from three very dynamic both speakers and people from Fledge, Village Capital, and Agora Partnerships, who are going to tell you a little bit more about their accelerators, but then also dive into particular tips and advice in case you're thinking about applying either to their accelerator or to any accelerator. The lessons will be ubiquitous, and then we'll open up into Q&A. So right now you're hearing from me again. This is Mark Horshevsky from MovingWorlds. Also on the line here is Luni, who's the founder and managing director of Fledge. Rachel Crawford, who's the innovation manager with Village Capital, based currently in Nairobi, Kenya. Brent Ruth, who is the global partnerships manager with the Entrepreneurship Database program. Brian Bell, joining us from Mexico City, who's the director of programs at Agora Partnerships. And then you'll also hear the voice a number of times throughout the presentation of Anna Phillips, who's the director of strategic partnerships here at MovingWorlds. Now, just a quick bit about MovingWorlds and why we're the ones helping organize subject matter experts on social enterprise acceleration. We're a platform that helps social enterprises around the world access expertise to overcome any challenge. And here, just a snapshot of our website with just the top of a long list of skills that any social enterprise around the world can come to our platform, list out the specific skills or areas that they need support with, and request for from our network of traveling professionals that are willing to volunteer their professional skills with your organizations. And on the cards here as pictured, if you do visit the site, you'll see a whole host of stories of other social enterprises, often at the same stage that many of you are on, who have turned to volunteer expertise to help overcome, any challenge. And one thing that we see very consistently in our membership is organizations are in that early scaling stage, and they're looking for support and they're looking for guidance. And so in addition to our access to expertise from around the world, we're also organizing more content and informational sessions like this so that you have the opportunity to connect not only with expertise, but some of our other fantastic partners from around the world. And one bit that we would like to highlight, because as a follow-up to this meeting, to this webinar, if you are applying, as an example, to an accelerator or or looking for an additional skills boost, MovingWorlds, as part of a report that we recently published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, has what we call a skills gap assessment. And so we host workshops with social enterprises on helping identify maybe what some of their biggest skills gaps are. And so if you're looking for support to get into an accelerator or graduating from there and need to fill in some of those gaps to help get your organization to the next level, here is a variety of workshops coming up in the near future where we can actually help you with that. And we'll be sending out these links afterwards. But now we really want to get over into the stars of the show. And so first, Brent, we're going to hand the microphone over to you. And we've got your slide queued up. So again, Brent Ruth is with the Entrepreneurship Database program that has done an incredible amount of research and analysis on what it takes to help entrepreneurs scale up their organizations and how accelerators are playing a role in that. So Brent, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're based. Like Mark said, I'm with the Entrepreneurship Database program, which is a research initiative based out of Goizueta Business School at Emory University, within a center there called Social Enterprise at Goizueta. So a lot of different names and organizations, but the Entrepreneurship Database program is my main area of focus. So based on the fact that you're attending the webinar, you're likely curious to see if an accelerator program can really help you grow your business's revenues or secure investment or innovate, which are sort of the key areas that accelerators focus on. The big picture behind what we're doing at the Entrepreneurship Database program and through a larger global accelerator learning initiative is this. A lot of investors, development agencies, and governments, they're also excited by the potential of accelerators to drive growth or solve social problems or increase employment opportunities. That's why we've seen such a massive growth in accelerators around the world since around 2011. However, the rigorous research on the effectiveness of acceleration methods is incomplete at this point. We don't have a full picture of their effectiveness or how differences across programs and models influence entrepreneur performance. So Social Enterprise at Goizueta here at Emory joined forces with the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, ANDE, to launch the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative to build upon this Entrepreneurship Database program, where we've been working with accelerator programs since 2013 to collect and analyze data describing the entrepreneurs that are applying to accelerator programs and being supported by them. So in essence, we're helping assess the effectiveness of accelerator programs. Some of the more recent research has shown that small and growing businesses that receive shorter, less individualized technical assistance in cohort-based, time-bound incubators and accelerators do demonstrate an average revenue growth over 2 times and job growth over 1.5 times that of other small and growing businesses. So initial data are showing that accelerators are having an impact. I guess the question then becomes, what is that specific impact? And the answer is really, it depends. It depends on what you're looking for. So my role today is to not so much talk about accelerator effectiveness, but give you an overview of the industry based on the accelerator and entrepreneur data that we've collected. And I guess from my perspective, provide some third-party observations to give you an idea of what to be looking for as you're considering an accelerator program. And I guess what I'm going to be talking about, it's applicable to all accelerators, not specifically accelerators focused on social enterprises. From what I've seen, almost all accelerators have some social enterprise focus, because most businesses, whether they call themselves a social enterprise or not, do have a social impact. So I don't really break it out by social enterprise accelerators, but you'll get a sense of that. So a couple areas that you should be considering when looking at acceleration programs. Assess what stage you're at as a business. Over 70% of the accelerators we track work with startups, meaning companies in the process of being set up, or early stage ventures, meaning the venture has initial market traction but is likely pre-revenue. But there are accelerators, around 40%, that work with idea stage ventures or the other end of the spectrum, ventures in the growth stage. So really assess the stage that your business is at and make sure you're selecting an accelerator program that targets your needs, and make sure that you meet the requirements of the program you're looking at. One area you could look at is that some programs have multiple tracks. So you could start out in an idea stage program and then move up through the pipeline within that accelerator program or within that organization as your business gains traction. So stage is an important thing to consider. The next is the sector specific versus sector agnostic program. Roughly 40% of accelerators in our research are sector agnostic, meaning they accept any venture regardless of sector, and they don't generally provide tailored support for one specific sector. So these might be good if you're trying to broaden your venture's reach beyond a specific sector. Maybe that accelerator would open you up to more opportunities that you hadn't thought about previously, or just provide more general business skills for you to grow your business. Of the other 60% that do have a sector-specific approach, you're basically guaranteed to find one that's right for you. There are obviously a ton of accelerators out there focused on healthcare, agriculture, food, technology, energy, financial services. But if you're more in a niche sector, such as the creative economy, waste, sanitation, or even, we've worked with accelerators that are focused on the blue economy, which is marine businesses, marine related businesses. So you're definitely, you're going to find one that's focused on your sector if that's what you're looking for. If you do want a sector specific program, I think it's important to find out what does that mean? What is the accelerator offering? Are they offering education on that sector? Are they offering specific networking opportunities within that sector, or specific business skills unique to that sector? So those are all things to consider in an accelerator program and ask when you're going through the application process. Next is time. Deciding how you want to spend your time in the program. A lot of programs use a mix of in-person and remote sessions. So, entrepreneurs receive in-person support in short spurts of time and then return to their homes and businesses to put the knowledge to work. That's something to consider. Are you able to, on a daily basis, implement what you're learning in the program, or are you sort of offline for weeks or months at a time to participate in an accelerator program? So consider how you want to spend your time. In terms of length, over 60% of accelerator programs last between 3 and 6 months, and 25% last between 6 and 12 months. So other things to consider, does the program require you to travel away from home for extended periods of time? Can your venture manage that time away? Do you have staff in place, etc.? Location is important too. There are a lot of accelerators that bring you from where you're based to a different country or a different region. So is that something you're interested in? Are you looking to expand into a new market? A lot of times those programs expose you to things in a new market, or give you an opportunity to test something in a pilot market that you could then take back to your home market. Investor connections. So one of the benefits of an accelerator program is access to investors or direct investment. Most of these connections are facilitated through one-on-one matchmaking or investor events, such as demo days or pitch nights. 65% of accelerators offer both of those. But if investment's a high priority for your venture, you should dig deeper into how that program is making the connections with investors. So in your interviews, ask, how often do cohort ventures get investment from someone they connected with during the accelerator program? Another thing to assess, if the only connection with investors is through a pitch event or a demo day, and that's not one of your better skills, perhaps you could look more at programs that focus on the one-to-one matchmaking. Finally, you might be interested in acceptance rates. You filled out your application. Now you want to know who you're competing with or how many people you're competing with. How competitive is it to get selected? Based on our experience and the data we've collected from accelerators, the median acceptance rate for accelerator programs is around 10%. So, if they're selecting a cohort of 10, just keep in mind that you'll be competing with approximately 100 other ventures for a spot in that accelerator program. So before I pass it over to the real accelerator experts running the programs on a day-to-day basis, I just wanted to highlight that At the end of May, we'll be publishing a new report that's going to look a little bit deeper at the different types of programs and how they're driving incremental funding into early stage ventures. So how are they increasing revenues or raising more outside investment? We compare the year-over-year data that we've collected from entrepreneurs and matched it up with the information we've gathered on the accelerator programs they participated in to see how revenues and investment is affected by the curriculum, content deliverers, the location, and how time is spent in the program, and then who the entrepreneurs are spending their time with. So we're finalizing that, and stay tuned, and we'll have that out at the end of May. And with that, I'll send it back to Mark and move along.
Thanks, Brent. That was fascinating. And we had a list of questions that were submitted ahead of the webinar. And I think it was every single one of the kind of overview questions that we had. But I guess one of them, which maybe I'm going to put to you before we move on, is if I was an entrepreneur, like, what would be the very first step you would recommend to someone who's completely new to finding an accelerator?
I would say just go through independently the things that I just mentioned, the different aspects. What do you really assess what you need from an accelerator program, knowing that the sky is the limit with what the accelerator program can offer. I mean, in terms of the diversity of programs that are out there, you really want to have a good sense of what you're looking for. Are you at a stage where you're looking for investment? If so, then start exploring what accelerators in your region offer investment or are best adept at connecting you with investors. If you're not at that stage yet, perhaps you want to, if you're just at an idea stage, there are plenty of programs out there that are focused on that. So I think really doing an internal assessment of your business and what you hope to get out of it, in setting your expectations, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs immediately think, okay, I need investment to start my business or grow my business. And that's what they think they're getting from an accelerator program. But from what we've seen, and I'm sure the other accelerator program managers on the line will attest to this, they go into an accelerator program and then they come out and what they got from it is so much different than what were things that they weren't expecting. So improved business skills that they didn't know they needed, or the peer-to-peer learning that they got from the program that's not necessarily related to investment. So I think assessing what you need first as a business is important. And then I think at the end, you'll share some links like gallydata.org. We have a directory of 540 different accelerator programs around the world. So you can go there. There are, I can't say any other specific ones at the moment, but I know there are other aggregate sites that sort of let you know what accelerators are out there. So I'd say that's the first step.
Brent, that's
Fantastic.
great. Oh, yep. Perfect. Brent, that's great. And we will send to everybody that's joining, as well as an email afterwards. We'll send out some of those links that Brent has just mentioned. And Brent, that was actually intentional or not, I'm not exactly sure, but a great setup to our next speaker, Luni, who is the co-founder and managing director of Fledge. And he's really going to talk about Fledge, but one thing I'll quickly flag that Luni's also developed is a series of books, as well as even a pre-accelerator, a workshop. So to Brent's point about, if an accelerator isn't quite the right option after your research, there's other great resources, and Luni's just one of the go-to leaders on these, both in terms of books and also other workshops that you can join to get ready here. So Luni, quick plug for you, but we'll turn it over and you can share more about Fledge.
All right, thank you so much. So I am, as Mark said, the founder and managing director of Fledge, which is a network of conscious company accelerators. Started here in Seattle. We've expanded now to run in Lima, Peru, in Vancouver in Canada, Barcelona in what I think is Catalonia, and we're about to launch in the University of Padua in Italy. And our goal is to just keep adding more cities each year. We just started expanding in 2016. The program's been around since 2012. We've run 11 sessions, 73 graduates from 22 different countries. Decided to throw the map up here. So everything with orange in it, we've had a company based there in the program. And most of the map is filled in now in terms of applicants. So in terms of like what we do, we help mission-driven for-profit companies get better. And better is whatever they need. It could be idea stage companies. These days, it tends to be companies that have at least a prototype, normally a little bit of revenue, at least a customer or two to prove out the idea. We run a 10-week program. So we bring the companies to one of our cities for, it's actually 9 weeks in person and the last week at home. And while they're in the program, we have a class on entrepreneurship, which is based on the books that Mark mentioned. We have a flood of mentors. We get 50 or 60 people to show up and sit down with the teams and provide advice until the teams tell us to stop doing that they need to get some work done. And then we spend 3 weeks, not just on prepping for demo day, we spend 3 weeks teaching our entrepreneurs how to do a TED Talk. So what we do on stage is a little bit above and beyond the norm, but it helps everybody stand out. And we use a model that is common in the tech world, but not very common in the social good world, which is we invest in every one of the companies that gets in. So the numbers vary a little bit from city to city, but in the US, it's $20,000 per team. We do about 7 teams. In terms of acceptance rates, we're down to about 3%. So it's really hard to get in. We get about 250 applications for those 7 slots. And in terms of the big question of, how does anyone get one of those coveted slots? It's actually rather simple. You fill out an online application. That process should take somewhere between 20 minutes and an hour at most. It should be a lot of the questions that you fill out for all the other programs you're applying to. I put on the chat window a couple links. So first and foremost, you got to learn how to be clear and concise. You need to learn how to describe what you do in 2 sentences, or even 1 sentence. The first question in our application is, what do you do? And that's 150 characters. So slightly more than an old tweet, slightly less than a new tweet. And then the rest of the questions on our applications, we actually posted up an annotated application that describes exactly what we're looking for. And in many cases, examples of how to answer it, now not to answer it. And it really comes down to not exactly what you say or how you say it. It comes down to, have we seen this business plan 10 times before? One of the advantages we have in running, all of us who run accelerator programs, is we see a lot of applications, which means we see a lot of the same ideas over and over again. And in some cases, we've seen them for years and know whether or not they can work or not. And you as entrepreneurs can't see that. There really aren't good resources for you to see the list of every company that got started this year or last year or the year before that. Beyond that, just general patterns of success rates in certain kinds of companies. So these days, crazy enough, even in the social good world, we're seeing a ton of blockchain companies. But I can't say I've seen any of those succeed yet. So those would be thrown in the dubious pile, as would anything in meaningful travel. Not to take away from travel companies, but I've never seen one in 7 years make any money. And so there's just kind of some patterns out there that we've seen that in the case of Fledge, we'll always comment on. One of the things that we provide is a trade. If you bother to fill out our application, we will take the time to provide you some feedback and tell you something about what we thought of your company, and more often than not, that's constructive criticism for your next application. And then before we get to questions, I'm going to actually end with one last piece, which is really important, which is it's really hard to get into these programs now, which means you should not plan on getting in on your first try. You should actually plan on applying as soon as you can, and then reapplying every time they're asking for applications. And that provides 2 benefits. So one, it provides you the practice of doing it. It provides you some feedback from some of the my program and others that are providing feedback. But secondly, it provides us with a view of how fast you're making progress. So the record stands right now as 4 rejections before you get into Fledge. That was a company out of Kenya. The first application was pretty bad, and the second one was a little bit better, and it got better over time. And eventually it hit some threshold of, oh my God, look at what he's done in the last 6 months. He's finally broken through. He found a way to prove us wrong. Now we want to help him. And in terms of, there's a little question I see on the chat window. Our only focus is impact. So any of the 17 UN goals is fine with us, as long as you're doing something that makes the world better. And anything between an idea and, I think the farthest along we've seen is 250,000 in revenue and 100,000 in investment before we write a check to you. So pretty much anything that's early enough to need our help. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Luni. Great to hear, and I love the story about your 4-time successful applicant. We had one question from Desta, who's asking, what are your operations and how are you launching in Africa? I can see on your map that you cover Africa, but perhaps you could explain exactly how that works.
So we don't have a blue dot in Africa yet. Right now, when you get an invitation to Fledge, it comes with again, enough cash that you can pick yourself up and move to one of these cities, whichever one you got into. And you're expected to be there for the entire 9-week program. We are talking to potential partners in both Accra and Nairobi to try and launch a Fledge in one of those 2 cities, as well as cities in India and cities in Southeast Asia. And Australia. We're trying to cover all the continents so that people don't have to travel that far.
Perfect. Thanks, Luni. And I know there's some other questions paneling in, and we'll address many of these at the end during the open Q&A session there. And one quick highlight, I think we're really fortunate on this webinar to hear from a few really standout accelerators. But as Brent mentioned, there are many others as well. And so if there isn't one in your specific region, we will be sending out a list that covers many. But like you've seen from Luni and Fledge, there is an ongoing effort, at least from the ones on this webinar, to expand and increase accessibility of programs and also the learnings from all those programs. And I really want to echo one point that Luni said, and by virtue of the MovingWorlds Network, we see this a lot as well, is that the screening for traction and progress. I think there's a key lesson there that if you apply, you're not waiting, to hear back. You're continuing to move forward on your idea. You're continuing to market test it. You're continuing to validate and invalidate the assumptions that go into making your organization process. And being able to document and show that process is something that will help you, of course, not only get into Accelerator, but actually grow as an organization and create impact. So while Fledge is on the very early stage, we're now going to hand the microphone over to Rachel, who joins us from Village Capital. Village Capital does a lot, and Rachel will share there, including some of the balance in terms of the types of organizations that they are looking for. So Rachel, with that, I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Hi, as Mark mentioned, my name is Rachel Crawford. I'm based here out of Nairobi, and I run our innovation projects for our emerging markets, which are India, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America. So the quick intro to Village Capital is that we are an early stage venture capital fund that runs an investment readiness program. We tend to steer away from calling ourselves an accelerator because there is an investment which is made at the end of each of the programs from our fund. So in terms of what we look for from companies, we're not just kind of seeking new ideas or inventions, but rather we're looking for companies that are solving some real global problems. So we focus on 2 major problem-solving areas. One is access to opportunity for underserved communities, and that's through our health, education, and fintech programs. And then resource sustainability of the planet, which is through our energy and agriculture programs. So we do run sector-specific programs, which means that we select 10 to 12 ventures within a sector-specific program. So for example, right now in Africa, we're running a fintech program. So that's 12 entrepreneurs sourced from across the continent within fintech. So we have entrepreneurs from Uganda, from Kenya, and from Nigeria. The reason that we have chosen this specific model is because we believe that there are many overlooked industries with less than 15% of startups valued above $1 billion being within agriculture, education, energy, financial services, or health. We also use a peer selection methodology, which is that during our programs, you're actually doing due diligence on each other's businesses. There's two reasons for this. One is that early stage due diligence is extremely expensive. No fund has managed to really crack this, and a lot of the earlier stage funds do run their own incubation or accelerator programs in order to have an opportunity to get to know the businesses over a longer period of time, or as my other panelists alluded to, since they last applied. So over the course of 3 months, the selected companies meet in person 3 times for 1 week, during which time they do due diligence on each other's companies, using a very strict structure and methodology that we've built out over the course of 9 years. The whole purpose of our program is around viewing your business from the perspective of an investor. So what we're really looking for is people who want venture capital. So if you're still at that R&D stage, or you're still kind of figuring out exactly who your customer is, you're probably better suited to an incubator, or you're probably better looking at grant funding for your R&D, or grant funding for your research into underserved populations. Like, by the time you're getting to us, a lot of that is already evidence. You've identified who your primary customer is, and you've identified what it is that is the problem that you're trying to solve. So we find, train, and invest in entrepreneurs. And then at the end of the program, as I mentioned, you're peer selected for investment. And then the top 2 performing companies, peer selected, receive the investment. So in terms of the do's or don'ts in terms of how a social enterpriser should know what stage is right to join an accelerator. Yeah, for us, it's really, you're ready for venture capital. This is about kind of understanding how to pitch your business to investors. And you're not pitching an idea to an investor. It's angel investors, it's early stage VC. Like, this is, how do I communicate my business to an investor in order to justify that I need the money. So in terms of do's or don'ts for applications, because this is very early stage still, but past idea stage, 50% of an investment decision in an early stage company is still based on the team. So you need to understand what your specific experience is and how it makes you the ones to solve this problem. A lot of what we ask is there at least 2 co-founders with different skill sets? So do you have someone with the technical expertise and someone with lived experience? I know you hear this a lot, but one person can't do everything in an organization. So have you identified where the gaps are in the skills that are going to be required to build this solution? And have you either brought someone on board who fills those gaps, or do you know who it is that you want to bring on board? So that's very important. And a lot of what we look at, especially if you're going into an emerging market that you're not from, is, do you have lived experience of this problem? Because a lot of the time, we get pitches or we get applications of people from abroad who are trying to solve problems in emerging markets and might have graduated from a great university, but don't have the lived experience of the problem. And that's okay, as long as you do have someone on your team who does have that experience. Again, another really important thing is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then, who exactly are you trying to solve this problem for? Are you able to articulate what your solution does? Are you better able to articulate what the world looks like if your solution works? And then really important to us is, you have to understand what you want to get out of this program. Like, have you done the research? Have you found out who our alumni are, read the blog, like understood what it is that we have to offer, and know why you're doing this? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to run a business. So if you're going to spend 3 months working on something, like there should be a really good reason that you're doing this. And that's okay to ask in the interview process as well. Like, if you want to talk to an alumni or someone else who's gone through the program, we actually really like it when people do that. Yeah, and then I'm just looking at my little list here. Yeah, back to what the other panelists were saying. 2 companies in our current fintech program for Africa were rejected last year. They were shortlisted, but they had too many assumptions that they hadn't validated. And so they went back and they validated some of their assumptions, and they collected evidence, not just kind of like big overarching remarks about we're in discussion with partners, but like we have a partnership deal with this organization, is really important for us. And then don't do's is better be specific and wrong than vague and right. We like specific numbers, specific experiments, specific statements, rather than like overarching things. It's a big red flag for us. So if you don't know exactly what you're talking about, go and find out. But yeah, better specific and wrong than vague and right. Also being self-aware. It's okay that you haven't got 3,000 customers by now, but knowing, about your business and understanding how you're going to get there is a key for us. So it's not about like pretending to be further along than you actually are. It's about knowing where you are now and having a clear idea about what milestones you need to reach to get to the next level. Evidence, and then understand why it is that you want venture capital. Not every business needs venture capital. Some businesses should get a loan from the bank. Sometimes it's actually cheaper to get a loan from the bank. So what is it about venture capital that appeals to you? And being able to really, to yourself and to us, explain what has made you go down this route of looking for an investment rather than, grants or a bank loan or family and friend funding. And that's all I've got for now.
Thanks so much, Rachel. That was really very, very solid, tangible advice and lots of detail in there. And again, you covered a lot of the questions that people had submitted before. But I really like this question that we had, which is, what is the single most important make or break the deal point in an application, would you say?
I think it would be the team. Have you got the people around you to make this succeed? Is that like, do you have someone with the technical expertise, someone with the financial expertise, someone with the lived experience, like all of those components, those big assumptions that you're making. And, they don't need to be like full-time employees of the business. They can be like advisors and different people that you've surrounded yourself with in order to fill in some of those big gaps. Because at the earliest stage, it's going to be that founding team, not just the founders, the founding team that's going to make or break whether or not this thing succeeds.
Rachel, that's great. Thank you. And, I think it's really interesting to hear that, even though, as Luni shared earlier, right, they're working with, often first-time entrepreneurs, like, early stage, whereas with Village Capital, a little bit farther along, really looking for venture capital investment, there's actually a very common theme in both, right? And that they're looking for, are you continuing to make progress towards a goal? And I think you'll hear that echoed again across not only, these panelists, but others, that, progress is really the best thing that you can do for your organization. And I know we've all heard anecdotes as well of, once you start making that progress, it might even change the type of organization or accelerator partner that you start working with. And so next up, we're going to hand the microphone over to Brian Bell with Agora Partnerships, who's going to share a little bit more about the work that they do. And they fall a little bit in between some of the stories so far. So Brian, over to you.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks everyone for sharing everything that's been brought up so far. So very happy to share a little bit about Agora Partnerships. In some ways, very similar to Fledge and Village Capital in terms of what we do and what we look for. And so we've been around for about 12 years. We started as an investment fund in Central America and started the Agora Accelerator as our flagship program in 2011. And we've now worked with 215 companies over 9 cohorts. We provide basically services that companies need to grow, mainly through personalized one-on-one consulting. So that's one thing that's a little bit different than some of the other programs that are available. So every company that we work with has a professional consultant that has between 7 and 10 years of professional experience, and that consulting typically focuses on growth and investment readiness. Generally, we aim to be a marketplace for entrepreneurs to come to get the resources they need to grow, whether that's access to mentors with expertise, access to investors with capital, or support in thinking through their growth vision or their growth strategy, or in working on their investment deliverables. So with each program that we run, the curriculum in a way is customized to the needs of each company through their consultant. We do that through a 4-month program. It starts with the Agora Retreat, which is a 5-day conference with entrepreneurs and investors to kick off, to bring everyone together. Part of what we're trying to do is provide entrepreneurs with resources. The other part is build a community of social entrepreneurs in Latin America and the Caribbean in particular, and a community of investors looking for those types of entrepreneurs, because it's all about relationships at the end of the day when it comes to growing a business, getting access to resources and capital. The consulting process goes through a diagnostic phase and then jumps into the consulting over the course of 4 months. During that time, the Agora consultant makes a visit to the company in person for a week. If they're not co-located in the same city, we have consulting teams based in Mexico City, Bogota, Managua, and Santiago, Chile. And the last part of the process is investment preparation and then access to capital. So we dive deep into working on investment deliverables with each company, such as executive summaries, pitch decks, financial models, and then start the investor matchmaking process. We have a network of about 200 investors that we aim to connect companies to during the process. And even after the process as well, a lot of the connections happen after the end of the 4 months once the company has come through the process. Part of the process is working on those deliverables. We provide a mock investment interview process as well for companies that are participating. We get about 250 to 300 applications per year, and we work with about 60 companies per year. So we're not quite as selective in the companies that we're selecting to work with. We are looking for companies that are established, for companies that have a certain level of traction. The typical range that we're looking for is between 50,000 and 2 million in annual revenue. Not necessarily need to be at the upper end of that, but that's the range that we've worked with companies in to date. But the main thing we're looking for is that you have a business model, a customer, and an impact model that makes sense, that work, and that you have the proof that you've been able to develop out your business to a certain level to serve customers and create the impact that you're trying to create, because we think those are the things that you need to be able to take the next steps, whether that's figuring out your growth strategy or raising capital from investors. In terms of the companies that we work with and what we're looking for, in addition to the traction piece, is having full-time team members. We are sector agnostic. We work with companies across areas of social and environmental impact. We're looking for companies that are looking for capital generally, although sometimes we make exceptions for that. And all companies that we work with are based in Latin America and the Caribbean. So probably not for all companies on this call, but that's the area in the world that we're focused on right now, and hopefully down the road we'll be expanding and focusing in other areas. And when we're considering entrepreneurs for the Agora Accelerator, we're looking for a few things in the application. So we're looking for a complete application. The answers that we look for are relatively short, just between 50 and 100 words. So we try to be pretty focused. But we're really looking to understand what you need and know that we can help you, and that we think that the Agora consulting process is the right fit based on the needs of the company. So the more specific that you can be in your application about why you want to join the Agora Accelerator, what challenges you've seen as it relates to the growth of your company, and what type of investment capital and uses you're looking for, will help us to assess if it's the right fit. It also helps to network with Agora entrepreneurs, Agora partners, or the Agora team. We have team members attending many of the impact investing and social entrepreneurship conferences around the region and in the United States and Europe. So just connecting in with someone to have a chance to chat about your business that generally knows what Agora looks for is helpful to get feedback and see if it's the right time and the right fit for you. But as with the other programs, there's never a bad time to apply. Getting in the pipeline and getting into contact with Agora at any time is the right time. And then we look forward to follow up and let you know if it's the right fit for the Agora Accelerator now, or if we think we should wait another 6 or 12 months until you might have a little bit more traction. And I would say that the main reasons companies don't enter the Agora Accelerator, one is that they don't have the level of traction yet that they need. So if we have a company that has no sales or maybe only a few $1,000s in sales, we won't really consider it ready yet, but we'll give you that feedback and encourage you to reapply the next cycle. And the other is lack of a clear impact model that's tied close to the business model. So we want to see that your impact will scale as your business grows. We tend to work with companies that are creating impact through the provision of products and services to a market in need, or through production practices that are socially or environmentally friendly. And we actually just closed applications recently on April 15th for the current round. The application form is open, but that was the closing date for the program that will start in August. The next applications will be reviewed in August for the program starting in February 2019. And I'll just post in the chat here 2 links. One is to an Agora pre-application form. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get on our radar, you're welcome to fill that out and we can be in touch with you from that. And the second is just the Agora website with more information about our accelerator program. So that's it. And I would be very happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thanks, Brian. Again, really thorough overview. And I particularly like your point about reaching out in person, which is such great advice in so many situations in life. And again, I think you covered so many of the questions that were asked before. We didn't have any come through live, but there's one here which I do like, which is what has been your favorite application from an enterprise and what made it stand out?
Yeah, so we're just actually reviewing the applications that came in recently and starting entrepreneur interviews. So I have quite a few fresh in mind. More recently, I won't mention any names of companies because information is a bit confidential, but one that we reviewed recently, actually, I think Luni knows them as well, from the Peru network, and it's a company that works on waste management. But it's a relatively early company. They had a very complete application. As part of the application, they also included investment deliverables that they had already created. So it was impressive, one, to see that a company which is doing around 10,000 in revenue this year so far has a pitch deck, an investment memo, cash flow statement, financial model. And so that helps to show us that you have, as an entrepreneur, a level of understanding of your business growth and a level of sophistication in how you're mapping out your traction to date that allows us to see that you have what you need to communicate with investors. And I would say the other piece of it is just growth. They're seeing month-on-month growth in double digits, which is pretty impressive and not something that we always see. So even for a company that is on the earlier end of the spectrum, we like to see, in whatever way you communicate it, through the responses or through your financials, to show what data points you have to show that you have figured something out. You have a business model that's working, you're making sales, you're developing partnerships, and so on.
Brian, that's great. Thank you for sharing those, and right of you to hide the actual name of the enterprise. You know, and I think again a common theme is, as we reflect back just on the last 40 minutes of presentation here, that from Brent talking about why accelerators exist, right, which is to help transfer know-how, to help create connections, and to help provide boost capital to help your organization get to the next level. And then you see that playing out at early stage. Fledge, a little bit more point of revenue with Agora, or still early stage, but in the scheme of accelerators, a little bit later there with Village Capital, who's really providing that first venture capital investment. You're seeing a common theme of, is there traction? Have you done your research? Have you done your homework? And I think as you are considering a accelerator, and for the attendees that are on this webinar, Some of you are pre-revenue, some of you are early revenue, some of you on this call are already over $1 million in revenue. You can see that there are actually opportunities for all of you to still consider whether acceleration is the right next step for your organization. But to Brent's point, I think echoed by all the speakers, it starts with an inward look of, what does your organization really need? What are the gaps? Where do you need support? And then to go and do that diligence, to look at every single accelerator, to look at their alumni, to look at what they talk about on their website. And spending that time up front can really save, it's a lot more effort to try and submit an application to every accelerator than it is to first do some research there. So, we're going to open it up now for more questions. I know there were some others that were submitted. But now, really kind of open panel for the last 5 minutes of our webinar. And as those come across, and please do use the chat box widget or the Q&A feature to submit those. But here's just a few resources, and we're going to be sending these slides out to everybody that's attended. The Impact Space Accelerator has a selection tool that I believe lists a number of accelerators across all sectors. Entrepreneur Data, which Brent spoke about earlier, has a complete list of their research, as well as upcoming research, as well as opportunities to get involved. And they have a big announcement next month with even more research coming. The Golly list of accelerators that was also shared by Brent really helps you further identify and due diligence on those accelerators. And then a few others, depending on if you're still wavering on that idea of, is acceleration right for me? Should I start to go look at impact investing directly? You can see that there's an impact investing map and a landscape map as well that we will have shared. And then for those of you interested in ongoing workshops with MovingWorlds, we're doing a skills and capacity building workshop. So I swear that wasn't a plug, but as you heard a few organizations highlight the importance of team, the importance of identifying your gaps, you'll have an opportunity to share some of your challenges with MovingWorlds and work with some of our alumni with support. If you are applying for an accelerator and looking for support, we'll be doing a workshop with some of our mentors, and that'll be a live virtual workshop. You can join from anywhere. And then in June, we'll be doing another webinar and workshop on helping get your business model and value proposition canvas in place. Now, with that said, I do see now that a couple questions have come across. Anna, can you help us sort through those and prioritize?
Sure. So we've got 3 questions come through. I'm going to start from the bottom. So Claire is asking, some applications in the grant application space allow for embedded video within a slide deck. What are the panelists' thoughts on that? And what format, in terms of length and content, etc., have you seen that's effective?
I'd love to jump in on that one. So we actually have 2 videos expected in our applications, one on the product and one on the team. What's fascinating in this space is way back when, 6 years ago when I started Fledge, everyone just shot both of those on their iPhones or on their cell phones and posted them up. These days, the product video is almost always something polished with some music. There's a lot of free tools online to make an explainer, and people use those. The key piece, make it a minute or 2 and not more than that, because we're looking at hundreds of those. And if they don't get to the point in 20 seconds, I'll usually just turn them off and go back to the text. So in all cases, when you make a video or when you're providing content to an answer, don't do it in the order you're taught in school. Don't make it an essay. Do it in the order that they write articles in newspapers, which is most important fact first, right? The first thing you should have in a video, the first thing you should have in an answer is, why is this important? What is interesting about your company? Do not start with, my name is such and such, and I have a social enterprise. We already know that. So keep it short, keep it interesting, and just give us enough to make us want to know more. Don't try and squeeze every last bit of facts into either of those videos.
Thank you. We have another question, again open to the panel. Palek has asked a question around fintech and your thoughts on how to tackle that space holistically while keeping impact in mind. So maybe how to balance growth and social impact.
I can jump in here. So by nature, if it is a fintech solution in an emerging market, because you're providing, like you're bringing people to access the financial market, that is enough of a social impact for us. So it doesn't need to be, you know, women and children in rural areas for us to consider that it has a social impact, because at the end of the day, if you're improving financial literacy and you're providing access to credit or responsible credit and opportunities for those who have been excluded by the existing financial institutions access to that market, then that's enough of a social impact for us. Yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. Wendy had asked a question which says, when accelerators talk about social impact, I feel like some of these are including environmental conservation enterprises and some are not. How do I tease out the ones that are open to environmental pursuits?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So I think it depends on each accelerator, and some have on their website what they're looking for, or a very specific focus of their program, like Village Capital often has. So it should be clear what they're looking for in the program. With Agora, we're open to working with environmental conservation businesses. They're often related to forestation or agricultural products and have an environmental conservation spin on it. And we do see investors with interest in that space as well. But I think it depends on each accelerator. If it's on their website, then I would suggest reaching out directly to the contact at the program to see if they're open to that type of business if it's not clear.
Yeah, and you'll find two environmental only accelerators now. One is the Nature Accelerator, which is my program out in Padua. Applications are closed for that. And the other one is the Techstars Sustainability with the Nature Conservancy. So we're starting to see that niche show up as well.
Thank you both. Desta's asked a question around financial, I think it's around finding financial people for entrepreneurship. So there's many graduates who are graduating from university in financial fields. How can we encourage them to become involved?
Any takers on that one? Desta, that's one that I'm happy to follow up with you on after. I think the acceleration focus, and I know as an example, there's the YALI program and some others that work on career and entrepreneurship readiness to really start those first steps. And Luni shared some resources as well in terms of readings and books that are also useful for kind of that first step. I think the emphasis on the applications here really with the other accelerators is once somebody's decided to become an entrepreneur and then really move into idea and program and product and company building is where you start to see these accelerators start to provide more progress. Maybe just one last question. I know we're against the hour, but I got this over email as we were going, which is a few of you mentioned, talk to alumni or talk to the staff. Do you have any thoughts? Does it help or hurt to be seen as somebody that, has, talked to an alumni and maybe emailed a few different staff members, right? Is that a best practice or does that hurt you?
I can't say I've ever seen it, but I would, anything that shows resourcefulness is a positive.
Yeah, we're certainly open to chat with any entrepreneurs that reach out. We have a team member who focuses specifically on recruiting and has calls all the time with entrepreneurs as they're interested in learning more. So we're happy to see that you've reached out and chatted, and it shows motivation, and we like to see that.
Perfect.
I'm going to jump in with one last question before we wrap up, which is Claire has asked, when you're looking at business plans for scaling an innovative business, exposed operating in developing markets, especially those that are offering services rather than product, what kind of growth rates in terms of revenues, numbers, impacted, etc., look interesting? And I guess the question is around what looks unambitious and as opposed to what looks unrealistic.
It's a really good question. So the general rule in the venture world is to be a venture scale company, you have to be growing 2 to 3x per year over year, with a first year that's in the $100,000s of revenue or equivalent. We don't necessarily, Fledge, we don't necessarily look for that. We look for companies that are solving real problems, that can get to a scale that is sustainable to them. And in terms of our investment dollars, can get them to about $500,000 in revenue in the next few years. So the general rule of thumb is no matter what scale you want to grow, you need to break even in somewhere in year 2, early in year 3 at worst. If it looks like you're profitable in year 1, then that's actually like a yellow flag. We have to look into like, how could you do that? Because most startups don't do that. Beyond that, that's the kind of detail that we would generally get to in a Skype interview, as opposed to just trusting what you wrote down in the application.
Great, thanks, Luni. Brian or Brent, anything to add to that question?
I mean, we're looking for growth. I mean, we want to see that company's growing. We don't have a specific number that we're looking for in terms of the growth rate month by month or year by year. But generally what we see from companies that have worked with the Agora Accelerator is they're seeing growth somewhere between 20 and 60% annually in terms of their revenue growth. They're seeing growth in the size of their team. They've raised some capital. Those are the types of things that we generally like to see.
Perfect. Thank you.
I guess, Mark, I would add just one thing, just not necessarily on that question, but the difference between ventures and emerging markets versus developed countries. We put out a report last year specifically looking at the breakdown between entrepreneurs that are applying to accelerators in emerging markets versus developed countries. So if you go to the Galley Data website, you can find that publication or that research report. So you can see more about, like, here's typically what an entrepreneur in an emerging market might look like when they're going in or being accepted into an accelerator program versus in a developed country. So I mean, we've seen similar results, or the rate of growth is similar across, but sort of the stage at which they come in is a little bit different. So you can take a look at that too.
Perfect. Thank you, Brent. And really, thank you everyone. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Rachel, who just had to jump off from Village Capital, Luni from Fledge, Brian from Agora, Brent from the Entrepreneurship Database program. All really not only doing great work, but taking a lot of time and effort to share some of those best practices. And for all of you that joined us today and are exploring social enterprise and social enterprise accelerators, I hope that the messages resonated clearly. We know entrepreneurship's hard. Stay at it, show growth, network, make those connections, but also take your time to do the research for any organization you're thinking about. And also in the resources like that Brent shared with the Galley data, that you can really look and find the accelerator that aligns with your team goals, and your organization's current stage and where it's trying to go. So thank you all so much. Really big thank you to our panelists. Again, Brent, Brian, Luni, Rachel, so wonderful to have you. Thank you for sharing your time and insights. And we'll be sending a follow-up email to everybody with links to all these great organizations and some of the links and research that they've mentioned throughout the presentation. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, morning, wherever you may be.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.